In these dark and uncertain days of Brexit, deal or no deal, and confusion over whether families and individuals should gather together over the holiday period at the end of a year when so many celebrations have had to be postponed, it may seem somewhat light-hearted to speak of marriage. But over the last few weeks, since the newspapers made the somewhat premature announcement that liberal rabbis are now permitted to officiate at mixed faith blessings under a chuppah, providing a couple give an undertaking that they will keep a Jewish home and bring their children up as Jews, I wanted to try and unravel some of the arguments that led to the decision. However, this particular issue is part of a longer paper which the Conference of Liberal Rabbis and Cantors has been discussing over the past few months, and it seems a little early to be setting out some reflections on this decision and other issues that are still under discussion. I don't want to turn away completely from the subject of mixed faith marriage, however, because as we've just read, the subject of a mixed faith marriage is part of our Torah portion this morning. Joseph's marriage to Asnat does raise a few questions about his identity. How is it that a son of Jacob allows his name to be changed to the Egyptian Safnat Paneach? How is it that he wears Pharaoh's signet ring and a gold chain of office round his neck and the linen trappings of Egyptian royalty? And how does this young man, scarcely out of his 20s, who has spent a few years in prison, end up married to the daughter of an Egyptian priest, becoming second only to Pharaoh in the land of Egypt? And what kind of wedding did they have? Did Joseph become so completely assimilated that he was perhaps willing to accept his bride's father, the priest Potipharah, to be the officiant, with all the marriage rituals of ancient Egypt? Or did Joseph insist on some Jewish customs and prayers in remembrance of his father's covenant with God? Of course, we don't know any of the answers to these questions, and anyway, they are somewhat anachronistic, as Egyptian marriages probably involved the simple transferal of a woman to the home of her husband, together with gifts from her parents. Having said that, a photograph that I came across of a relief courtesy of the University Library in Halle shows Ramses II seated together with the gods Ptah and Seth underneath what can only be described as a chuppah or mandap, the canopy that is used for marriage ceremonies in Hinduism. The canopy looks solid with 4 slim, elegant pillars supporting a decorated fixed roof. The 3 figures under the mandap are holding out their arms as though beckoning to Ramses' bride, Queen Matho-Neferura, who is accompanied by her father, King Hattusilis. This kind of chuppah, it seems, long predates Jewish custom, for the earliest evidence of the use of a chuppah in Jewish marriage ceremony goes back only to the 16th century CE. The Torah has very little to say about Joseph's bride, Asnat, only that she is the daughter of Potipharah, a priest of On, and that she bears 2 sons to Joseph, Manasseh and Ephraim. Everything else we learn about Asnat is speculation and fiction. Is it just a coincidence that her father, Potipharah, bears a similar name to Joseph's first master, Potiphar, who had entrusted responsibility for the household to the young Hebrew slave, until Potiphar's wife makes a false accusation against Joseph that he tried to rape her and lands him in prison. Later sources, including one Targum, Aramaic translation, and some Midrashim, tell different stories in which Asnat, also called Osnat, is either the daughter of the wife of Potiphar or the offspring of Dinah's rape, who was brought to Egypt, where she married her cousin Joseph, and in this way was reintegrated into the family of Jacob. Dinah is Jacob's daughter, the only daughter that's mentioned. Most early Jewish sources in Hellenistic and Roman times seem to have no difficulty with the fact that Asnat is Egyptian and therefore has a different religion from Joseph. However, in exploring the rabbinic embellishments to these sparse biblical verses about Asnat, I discovered that she is the principal character in a widely disseminated Jewish love story from Hellenistic or Roman times, now called Joseph and Asnat, written sometime between 200 BCE and 200 CE, probably in Egypt. The story begins with Joseph's arrival at the house of Asnat's father. The two main characters meet for the first time. Asnat is drawn to Joseph and moves forward to kiss him, but Joseph rejects her kiss, and Asnat mourns for 7 days, and on the 8th turns to God in prayer. Turns to Joseph's God, I should say, in prayer. A heavenly visitor appears to her in the tower chamber, telling her that she has been accepted by God and sharing with her a mysterious honeycomb, perhaps a symbol of Asnat finding her spiritual home, or of wisdom. The heavenly visitor returns to heaven, and at the end of the first part of this story, Joseph and Asnat meet again. Their love is celebrated across the country with a wedding, at which the Egyptian pharaoh officiates. Later, during the 7 years of famine, Asnat and Joseph visit Jacob in the land of Goshen. In the Torah, it's known as Goshen. However, when Pharaoh's son sees her, he tries to abduct her and enlists help from the 4 sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, the maidservants of Leah and Rachel. The plan fails, and Joseph, in a remarkable turn of affairs, becomes Pharaoh of Egypt. This story seems to have circulated and been popular among readers, as it has been passed down to us through more than 90 manuscripts and in 7 ancient and medieval languages. Manuscript versions written in ancient Greek go back to the 11th century CE, and those written in Syriac to the 6th century CE. These manuscripts are not identical and are of differing length, and there is scholarly discussion about whether the story is of Jewish or Christian origin. Perhaps key to the story in some respects is what we might describe as Asnat's conversion from cloistered virgin in a tower, worshipping Egyptian gods, to a repentant who repudiates the idolatry of her parents and embraces Joseph's God and family. The marriage is only able to take place once she converts to Joseph's religion. The novel, in some respects, is a more detailed version of a midrash, which implies that Asnat only became a convert because she happened to marry Joseph. In other words, her conversion did not originate with herself, but was the effect of contact with a righteous person. But another aspect of the novel is that Asnat is described not as an Egyptian woman, but in every way more like the women of the Hebrews. She may worship Egyptian gods and decorate her bedroom with Egyptian idols and their jewelry. She may make sacrifices to them and eat at their table each day, but she ends up rejecting the idols and throwing them out of the window. In a fascinating essay on the novel and its various recensions by Angela Standhardinger, the author highlights the boundaries between the family of Jacob and Asnat, the foreign-born woman. Because she is seen as an abomination before Jacob's God, she must convert, and in this way be accepted and integrated into Jacob's family. But these boundaries are far from fixed in the novel. In fact, they become more fluid in the course of the narrative. By the time of his wedding, Joseph has accepted Pharaoh as his second father, and worship of a universal God seems to transcend family and ethnicity. So the God of Joseph's father Israel and Jacob's God becomes, in universal terms, the living God, the Most High, and the creator of the world. The novel also highlights something that has become more evident over the past few months as our services and classes have become open to more and more people. I don't think it is an exaggeration to say that Rabbi Igor and I have been overwhelmed with requests from individuals who wish to convert to Judaism or simply to be part of our online community. And it isn't only those who have Jewish partners, but those who have discovered that liberal Jewish values are close to their own values, who wish to find a place where they can belong and express freely what they believe and how they wish to live their lives. Our boundaries have become more fluid. People are joining the synagogue as friends, as seekers on a journey to explore faith and practice, and sometimes as future converts to Judaism. A great strength of liberal Judaism is its openness and willingness to include rather than exclude. It means we have to be strong in our liberal Jewish identity and not feel, as some sections of the community feel, that non-Jews accompanying us on our journey will weaken or dilute our identity and our faith. I think it is a testimony to our strength and the clarity of our message that the gates of inquiry are open at all times, and that individuals, like the contemporary Asnat, whether they convert or simply associate themselves with the community, feel drawn to our services, feel drawn to learn more about Judaism, and feel part of the Jewish family in this congregation of the LJS. To return to our biblical verses we read this morning, although it is highly unlikely that Asnat converted to Judaism, no process existing at that time, we should acknowledge that the descendants of her two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, were assigned territory in the land and counted among the tribes of Israel. They were as Jewish as Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Joseph, Benjamin, and the rest of them. And finally, I would like to imagine that if Joseph and Asnat, landed up in a Zoom meeting with me today to request a mixed faith blessing under a chuppah, and if they were serious about maintaining a Jewish home and raising children as Jews, I would be happy to officiate on their behalf.